Hi there. Welcome to the June 18th, 2024 Bellevue City Council meeting. City Clerk, could you please do the roll call?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Malakutian. Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
And Councilmember Neuenhuis has been excused from this evening's meeting. Councilmember Stokes.
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn.
Here.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
Thank you. These lights?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And justice for all.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? City Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for oral communications?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this evening there are 8 pre-registered speakers for oral communications. So before I start calling names, I'll go over a few of the rules that the council has put in place. The total time for oral communications is for a period of no more than 30 minutes, and all topics must relate to City of Bellevue government. People speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and then if time remains, people speaking to items not on tonight's agenda will be called. The presiding officer is authorized in both of those categories to give preference to those who have not spoken to council within the last 60 days and people who will be speaking to items coming in front of the council within the next 60 days. Speakers are each allowed up to 3 minutes to speak, and only a maximum of 3 speakers are allowed to speak to any one side of a particular topic. This evening, there are 4 speakers signed up in support of the tree ordinance code amendments, so we will only be able to hear from 3 of those speakers. And with that, I will call Ruth Lipscomb, who's our first speaker.
I'm going to ask also that our speakers be polite, that they avoid swear words, insults, rude language. I think we can all express ourselves without that. So that's to everybody. Welcome.
Thanks. Hello, Mayor Robinson and members of the City Council. My name is Ruth Lipscomb, and I serve as a board member on Trees for Livability. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of our 1,700 petition signers who support updating Bellevue's tree codes. Our group would first like to thank the staff for their hard work, for being open to input, and for their responsiveness. They're drafting what could become the standard for tree ordinances across the Puget Sound region. Thank you also to Mayor Robinson and the City Council members who have kept your eyes on the end goal. You share our vision for a Bellevue where every resident in every neighborhood experiences a canopy of thriving trees that provide shade, wildlife habitat, carbon sequestration, noise and erosion control, and majestic beauty. But we're not quite there yet. Trees for Livability has some specific suggestions on the draft codes that you'll be discussing tonight. First, we'd like you to extend the period between allowed removals of landmark trees to at least 3 years. The draft has just a 12-month wait after one landmark tree is removed before a homeowner can return for a permit to take out another one. We believe this short window will lead to more overall tree loss. Landmark trees take 80 to 100 years to get to mature size, and they should not be taken out casually. Please extend the time between removals so that we don't lose our most valuable mature trees. We also request that the city allow residents to quickly and easily check whether a permit has been issued for any tree removal. That doesn't mean looking it up on mybuildingpermit.com, which is difficult. And then that you prioritize a method to report and stop any illegal tree removals 24/7, 365. We need our neighbors to be able to head off unethical tree companies who notoriously show up with chainsaws on holiday weekends when code compliance is off duty. We'd rather have the trees saved than have penalties after they've been cut down. And speaking of penalties, you should consider dedicating any penalties and also the permitting fees to the same uses that the LUCA specifies for in lieu fees, which is tree planting and preservation. Having an evergreen funding source could greatly expand the city's very successful tree giveaways. And circling back to the LUCA that you reviewed in May, the version distributed in tonight's packet includes revisions that merely encourage retaining landmark trees and groves of trees when a property is redeveloped. We much preferred the previous version that required retention unless it was infeasible, but apparently retaining trees has now been downgraded to just a suggestion. So please undo that unfortunate edit. We look forward to tonight's discussion and to supporting the successful rollout of new tree protections in Bellevue. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lee Sargent.
Good evening, and I'm certainly glad to see you all here. Your faces are very familiar to me. I thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, for basically being the people that have made us a great city for the last several years. I have the same responsibility as Ruth in being on the board of Trees for Livability, and my concern still remains the trees. It's important that, from my standpoint, that the city take on the responsibility of being the ones that make the decision about these huge trees from being either taken down or not, because it should be a community resource. And they take decades, sometimes even up to 100 years in order to be made. We can't really hear their voices as they're being chopped down and actually being cut down. But there is a strong need for us to recognize that they provide heat relief, they provide wind relief, they provide sustainability in times of real harsh situations that provide for broader canopy that we oftentimes talk about. We can do without it, we get rid of it, and then those other trees are weakened and they are capable of failing quickly. I think it's important because I know that you know what's going on here tonight. And you know what's going into the codes because I've listened to you. I know you know these things and you think these thoughts. We like you to keep us a beautiful city, a sustainable one, and that those trees, as much as possible, might be around those affordable lots that we're trying to put in, so that even those people that can't afford the more expensive options will have the chance to live here and know that this city is beautiful for them too. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fei Hu.
What's the name?
Fei Hu.
Okay, thank you.
Respect the mayor, council members, and the fellow Bellevue residents. My name is Fei Ho. I stand before you today as a deeply concerned citizen, alarmed by reckless destruction of our city's irreplaceable natural heritage, our cherished heritage trees. Just recently, I witnessed firsthand heartbreaking removal of every single tree on the neighbor's property, including a stunning collection trees carefully tended over decades by the former owner, our beloved local artist, Andy Phoebes. Those trees provide beauty, habitat for the wildlife, and connect us to Bellevue's rich natural legacy. But their loss was not an isolated instance. Across our city, mature tree and green space are being stripped away by developers who openly violate tree protection ordinances with no consequences. Permits are ignored, 100-year-old landmark tree cut down, and our urban forests rapidly diminished, all in pursuit of unsustainable growth. This removal of our natural treasure carries grave impacts: increased runoff, loss of privacy, removal of community character. The stumbling reality of climate change will weigh heavily. trees are not merely obstacles, but essential resources we can't ill afford to sacrifice. Even though we have code that require permits and mitigation for tree removal, the city routinely tends to a blind eye to violations. This is a completely lack of meaningful inspection, enforcement, and accountability of those who break the rules. Even more outrageous, the city has deployed too many legal resources, not upload tree protections, but opposites and silence residents' reasonable appeal to save heritage trees like my own beloved plum trees, which graced my property almost 2 decades. This misplaced priority are unacceptable. Our community demands real solutions that balance sustainable development with preserve our extremely valuable natural resources. That is why I strongly urge council leaders to take firm action.
Ms. Ho, I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if you could send that into the council, I'd appreciate it as an email.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Neil Molnick.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. My name is Neil Molnick with Clover Capital. We own the property where the Ford dealership is located on 116th and 4th, adjacent to the location of the Grand Connection crossing. And that's actually why I'm here tonight. I'm also a member of Friends of the Grand Connection on the steering committee. And I joined that group because I'm personally very excited about the crossing project. And I want to do what I can to help make it happen. As a reminder, Friends of the Grand Connection is a group of over 50 individuals and organizations that have come together to advocate for and be a part of making the crossing happen. There's a real sense of excitement for the opportunity ahead of us. At our recent Friends Steering Committee meeting, we had a presentation by the WSP team. They talked about type, size, and location options for the crossing. We're most excited by 2 of the options, the 2 that cross 405 most directly. They seem to make the most sense and seem financially more doable. One of the things that we talked about at our most recent steering committee meeting, and what I'm learning is a common theme amongst the members, is the notion of having the crossing be memorable and doable. We acknowledged in the meeting that we will need to discuss trade-offs in order to accomplish this, and we look forward to those discussions. Mostly, we are very excited about the Grand Connection crossing and what it'll bring to our side of the freeway in Wilburton. We see this as a way to enhance and grow the neighborhood, create spaces for gatherings and activations, and of course, to connect to East Trail, and really to reconnect both sides of the city and more. It's exciting to be a part of a group and in a city where there's so much opportunity converging at once. This is a once-in-a-lifetime project for Bellevue, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the team to help make it happen. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
City
you. The
Clerk,
next.
I only heard 2 people talking about the tree codes tonight. Do we still have another person signed up to do that?
We do, but I heard 3.
Well, I heard the first one, the second person, Lee, but I don't think Faye was talking about tree codes, about the ones we're doing tonight.
Okay, if you would like to take another one, there is one at the end.
Yeah,
but
I
we'll
would
call
do
our
that.
next speaker. The next speaker is Lucy Pyatt, who is joining us virtually. Ms. Pyatt, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor Robinson and council members. I'm Lucy Pyatt, the Director of Energy and Financial Assistance Programs at Hopely. And I'm here to share how thrilled we are to be in partnership with Energy Smart Eastside and to give our gratitude to the City of Bellevue for its leadership in this program. HopeLink provides outreach, eligibility verification, and case management to Energy Smart Eastside Boost participants, guiding low-income homeowners through the process of getting a heat pump, and we also make the final payment to vendors for installation. As East King County's provider of federal LIHEAP energy assistance and PSE help services, we see every day the energy burdens our clients face, as well as the wide plethora of heat sources used in our region, from oil and propane to wood, as well as electric and gas. Last year, for example, we spent over a week seeking propane vendors for our clients after our very last one retired. Getting to apply our expertise and the trust that we've built in our community to the work that will have such a lasting impact, not only on our clients, but also in our community and to our clients, is such a joy. Seeing 5 cities and a human services nonprofit come together so effectively and efficiently is a model that I truly think is exemplary and have rarely gotten to see in the work that we do. And seeing our clients discover the joys of heat pumps is extraordinary when they'd automatically written off that possibility for themselves, knowing that they could never cover those upfront costs. We see clients cry. We see clients shocked that air conditioning comes from heat pumps, and all of the various kind of new learnings that they experience through this process. We're so excited about and committed to the coming growth of Energy Smart Eastside and the work of the Boost program to ensure access to heat pumps for our low-income neighbors. And we're thankful for all of your support and excited to see where it goes.
Thank you. Our next speaker on the list is Matt Larson. Mr. Larson, can you hear me?
I can, yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of Ordinance 6792. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry that I'm not there in person tonight. I'm down at the AWC conference in Vancouver. I won't go into detail on the Energy Smart Eastside ordinance that's before you tonight, since the staff will be providing you with a more detailed report. But I just did briefly want to quickly say that Puget Sound Energy is very excited to partner with the Energy Smart Eastside program in order to provide no-cost heat pumps to low-income customers within the city of Bellevue and its participating communities. We also greatly appreciate the role that HopeLink will play in helping implement this valuable program. Through such strong partnerships, all of our residents and customers can afford to participate in achieving a clean energy transition. Thank you for your efforts and invaluable partnership. Council members on, I look forward to seeing you down at the AWC conference later this week.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tim Hay.
Mayor Robinson and council members, as you've watched the logging trucks haul away the stately trees from so many of our older homes, how has it made you feel? Well, me too. Most of this is caused by home builders, who are a different animal, and I should know. I was a general contractor building homes in Bellevue for 26 years. Builders do not want their process interrupted. They worry about their problems after the sale closes. I speak to enforce tree retention, especially to prevent tree removal before an older home might be torn down. Without real teeth, our new tree codes will be ignored by most tear-down builders. Unless, number 1 through 3, 1, all owners, sellers, builders, investors involved on the site sign the site plan involving significant trees to be retained, 50% or more of the existings. The same people must sign a city statement affirming that they have not been involved in tree removal during the past 6 months on that property, nor shall they be involved prior to the building permit's issuance. Number 2, a tree inspector. at a cost of perhaps 1/200th of 1% of the city budget. The city employs qualified inspectors to enforce our building codes. A tree inspector can identify and photograph evidence of scofflaw tree removal. Properties would be seen at least 3 times. Tree inspection can become so effective that most builders will soon self-police. Rogue tree cutting will largely disappear due to the near certainty of being caught. Number 3, builder penalties. Mere fines won't work on builders. What will work is the Armageddon penalty. Red tagging and no city processing for 6 months. I'll guarantee that this will get the builders' attention. If we value our trees as we say we do, then why not at least try out all 3 parts of this concept? I'm open to your thoughts and questions. Fire away.
We don't do back and forth at public comment, but thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Our final pre-registered speaker is Alex Zimmerman.
Thank you. My name Alex Zimmerman, and I am president of Stand Up America. You prosecute me last week, you know what this means? 4 times what is you prosecute me and put me in jail for 2 days. Why? Because information what has come from prosecutor and police is a pure fraud. It's okay, no problema. You prosecute me before 3 times. Twice for my class 2 class action, and 1 for trespass. In class action 12 years ago, your policeman died in jury trial who go for 2 weeks from heart attack. I spoke with you before about this 10 years ago. Guys, I try understand how government, what as we have here, and I live here for 40 years, you know, it is almost 40 years. Why you always don't like somebody like me, you know what this mean? A man who have different opinion, and Jew, you know what this mean? Prosecute. You, it's okay, prosecution, but why you doing lie and fraud? Can you explain to me 4 times? I look right now like a President Trump, you know what this mean? I write in my Twitter, I am local Trump right now. 4 times prosecute. Guys, are you understand about what is I talking? You are pure Nazi, Gestapo, fascist, anti-Semite bandita. It's exactly who you are. When 4 times lying on the road, policemen and prosecutor, they show how as government operate. It is go for almost 40 years. In condition go worse and worse, it don't go better. You always stopping me when I speak here. You thinking you a player God. We have a law. You're supposed to be by law everything. But nothing happened. Because you, by definition, a criminal, a bandita, you know what it means? And you have this Nazi Gestapo anti-Semite mentality, and I talk about this many times. Guys, almost 40 years I see exactly same government, nothing changed. First, you all Democrat, you know what it means? So by definition, you are fascist, because one-party system is always fascist. Second time, you bring people from Iran. I don't understand why this happened. It's only 100 Iranian in Bellevue, 1,000 Jew. I never see in this chamber Jew for 40 years, but I see Iranian who live only for 10 years here. Guys, you understand about what I'm talking? I'm talking about you, so you are ordinary bandita, a Nazi, a fascist, a Gestapo, an anti-Semite. And I'll be very happy before I will be dead. Come to this chamber and talk about this. Stand up, America. We need to clean this chamber from this bandita and junta. Bye-bye, my friend.
This is the end of our pre-registered speakers list. At this point, we do have a few minutes left in oral communication, so I'd ask if there is anyone joining us in council chambers who would like to make a comment. If so, please raise your hand, or anyone online, also raise your hand. As a reminder, we have reached the maximum number of speakers in support of the tree code ordinance. I do see one hand online. Joe Kunstler, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
Thank you. I want to be a bit careful here, but I happen to have reviewed the court case that the last speaker spoke about. Apparently, your brave police officers intercepted Adolf Zimmerman at the Bellevue Square Mall where he was trespassed. It's not clear why, but I would highly encourage you to go have an executive session with prosecutor Angelina Petrosyan, Petrosyan, to discuss this case because Mr. Zimmerman is going to be coming before you about it a lot, I would guess. I'm going to send your mayor the court records I have, and I also want to say on a very personal level, Alex Zimmerman lied about you. You're great Americans, and you deserve better. Thank you for your public service.
Thank you. If there's anyone in council chambers, if you could raise your hand. Okay. Mayor, I don't see any additional hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have report of the city manager, Ms. Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, council members. We have a positive news item today under the city manager's report, and you heard a little bit about it from some of our oral communications participants. And that is the Energy Smart East Side, which has been awarded $4 million in funding from the Washington State Department of Commerce and Puget Sound Energy. So tonight we have Jennifer Ewing, our sustainability manager, and Sarah Phillips, our Energy Smart East Side program manager, here to share a little bit about the award. This is on the consent agenda tonight, and how the 5 cities are working together. With that, Jennifer?
Great, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, for the opportunity to give a quick update on Energy Smart East Side. We're really excited about the 2 grants on the consent agenda this evening. As a refresher, Energy Smart East Side was launched last year. It's the signature program of the East Side Climate Partnership, which is our partnership between Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond, Mercer Island, Issaquah, and now Sammamish has recently joined to advance climate action on the East Side. The work of Energy Smart East Side really builds on a lot of successful collaborations we have on the East Side with partners like HopeLink for our human services work, for affordable housing, economic development. We work closely with these other cities on many things. Really happy to kind of expand on those partnerships and collaborations, and also with other partners such as PSE and HopeLink. Another great thing about this program is that it leverages city funding from each of the different cities to help us bring in grant funding like we have on the agenda this evening. And finally, we're really proud as the program administrator for the program that, this is really demonstrating Bellevue's leadership on climate and sustainability in the region. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Phillips, our program manager, to tell you more about the program.
All right, Mayor Robinson and council members, thank you so much for having us. And I will tell you that my clicker seems to be a little bit fussy, so apologies if slides kind of move around a little bit. First of all, I want to just kind of start off with one of the foundational collaborations that the Eastside Climate Partnership has done is they get together, and as many of you know, they do an annual greenhouse gas inventory. And as it turns out, about 25% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions generated on the east side, 23% in Bellevue to be specific, are generated from the energy we use in our homes. At the same time, 90% of the single-family housing stock in the east side and in Bellevue use gas furnaces, and we know that gas used for space heating is a significant driver of those greenhouse gas emissions. And as a result, Energy Smart East Side is focusing all of their measures this year on adoption of heat pumps. And though you may know this, I'll just go ahead and share with you. I think of heat pumps as a really interesting and amazing 2-for-1 climate solution because they tackle climate on 2 fronts. Number one, they're extremely effective at decreasing carbon emissions generated in the homes. And second, they help increase our community resiliency by adding air cooling and air filtration, which is really important as we head into increasingly hot and smoky summers. And transforming the market is actually really, really key to us hitting our climate objectives in 2050. By 2032, what we really want to see is that nearly 100% of residential HVAC sales have transitioned to heat pumps. And the math there is if we achieve that, then that means by 2050, most homes will have completed the transition off of their gas furnaces to efficient electric heat pumps. I really like this chart from Rewiring America. This is for Bellevue specifically, but it kind of illustrates the type of transformation we're attempting to catalyze in the next really short few years. That bottom line in the graph is really showing you what a business as usual projected growth of heat pump sales might look like, while the top line shows the steep adoption rate we need to encourage to actually hit that 2032 target. So when we think about this transition, there's kind of really three barriers that we hit, and that's what our programming is really kind of tailored around. You know, number one, what are heat pumps? Their name alone doesn't necessarily suggest they have cooling. So do people understand what it is, and have they identified it as a priority for their home? And then once you've identified it as a priority, is it something that's accessible? Is it affordable? And then, you know, home improvement projects, it's kind of complex. How do I get started? How do I compare different models of heat pumps? What are the contractors telling me? How do I make sense of all of these rebates? And so our programming is really wrapped around these problem spaces and looking for solutions, starting with generating awareness. We're going to talk about a little of this in the next slide, but we do a lot of different realms of outreach, education, and marketing, where we're really trying to stay top of mind in front of residents year-round. We offer rebates for middle-income residents to help them offset the cost of a heat pump and make that investment. And you heard from Hope Lane and Puget Sound Energy in the public comments earlier, where we offer no-cost heat pump installs for our low-income residents. And then for everyone in the community, we offer one-on-one support. You can come to Energy Smart Eastside, book an appointment with an energy advisor. We sit down with homeowners one-on-one and help them just really navigate this process. And then our network of HVAC contractors, incredibly essential to this work. Biggest time when you might need to think about a heat pump is when your furnace breaks. And so we work really, really hard with the HVAC contractors to make sure they know about our programs, they can offer our rebates, and they can help educate customers as well. So education and generating awareness is a sustained effort. You know, I've seen some research that indicates from the moment that you think, I might want one of those heat pump things, I'm tired of being hot, my furnace is about to die, to you making a call to a contractor can take up to 2 years. So we really look at engaging with our community across many modalities, in addition to the kind of like typical tabling and workshops and webinars that we do year-round. We do a variety of campaigns and look for opportunities to actually leverage the media as well. Some really cool examples of that. We just wrapped up a really successful campaign with our partners at Puget Sound Energy. They very generously cross-promoted our $3,000 fuel switch incentive, and that drove a record number of applications to our site. So that was a huge success. We're working with a marketing firm that's updating our branding for the long haul, and you can see they're using some humor to try and educate folks. You'll see that ad campaign running on transit and digital advertising in August. And then we look for opportunities to engage the media. And a great example of that was we hosted Governor Inslee last week at an affordable housing where we had installed some heat pumps. And there was a really nice segment on King 5 Media last week around our program and one of the recipients of our program. So there's just no two ways about it. Heat pumps are an absolutely huge investment, and what we know is that over 50% of our homeowners are probably going to need some level of financial assistance to make this switch. Just to kind of put that in context, if you were to go out and buy a top-of-the-line gas furnace, super efficient, that's going to set you back about $12,000. If you say, well, I'd like to get an estimate for a heat pump, that's going to be between $20,000 and $30,000, especially on the higher end if you need electrical upgrades as well. So a big part of our program is making sure that we have the right level of assistance across our demographics, what's the rebate they might need or level of assistance they need, make it really, really easy to access, and then make it really easy to stack with all of the other incentives that are out there, which might be federal tax incentives, it might be utility rebates, it might be state rebates. The $4 million in funding that is on the consent agenda tonight is really going to help us scale. That's coming from the Department of Commerce and also Puget Sound Energy. All of it will be going into existing programming. 89% of it will be going into programming for middle income and low income residents, and we expect that to yield about 450 heat pump installs, which we're really excited about. And 11% will go into that marketing and administration to make sure that we can keep these programs top of mind for everybody. Thank you so much for inviting us. I'm just going to kind of leave you with this. Bellevue's leadership on this not only is going to help Bellevue reach its climate goals, it won't only help the Eastside Climate Partnership cities meet their climate goals, but it actually has the potential to build capacity regionally. I was just on the phone today with a colleague at City of Shoreline who's running a similar project, for example, and our ability to kind of create this ecosystem across community nonprofits, utility, the state, the business community, our ability to create that ecosystem and create an efficient program becomes a model elsewhere that others want to tap into. Share your blueprint. And as we do that, we really help not only help us meet our climate goals, but expand and really amplify our climate impact all up. So thank you again for your support, and thank you for having us.
Great presentation, thank you. Anything else, City Manager?
No, that's the end of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have 2 study session items tonight. Ms. Carlson, I'll let you introduce the first one.
Mayor Robinson, members of the council, this first study session is an update on the Grand Connection crossing work. You last received an update on this in March, and since then, the staff has been very busily working with the teams and our community members to engage in the alternatives analysis and to have conversations with our public. And so the presentation tonight is an update on some of the design and engineering work, and also some of the work that has been, some of the information that's been gathered from our community to inform this project. So with that, we have staff at the table: Jesse Canedo, Chief Economic Development Officer; Anthony Gill, our Grand Connection Program Manager from Community Development; and our Assistant Director in Transportation, Maher Waleye. And there is no action being sought tonight. This is information only. With that, I will turn it over to Jesse.
Thank you, City Manager Carlson. Good evening, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, members of council. As this acting city manager said, tonight's session is for information only, but we have some really good updates as the work continues to roll forward really quickly. We have an alignment that all of our partners can support. We have done some really good community engagement and getting good feedback, and I've begun the work on the deep funding analysis. So with that, I will hand it over to Anthony to take us through the agenda.
Thank you, Jesse. Let's go forward. So tonight we'll share a little bit of additional background just to ground everyone in the Grand Connection and where it sits along the entire route, the Grand Connection crossing. We'll briefly touch on some of the trade-offs which we'll be grappling with as we move forward with design and the alignment analysis. We'll touch on funding development, and then we'll look forward at upcoming opportunities for public engagement and outreach. So just as a reminder, the Grand Connection is more than a freeway crossing. We always want to kind of bring it back out to start. It's a program of placemaking and redevelopment projects running all the way from Maidenbower Bay Park through downtown and across I-405 to East Rail in the east. And many elements of the corridor are actually already in place, including phase 1 of Maidenbower Bay Park and the new signature Pelote Plaza, which has already become a beautiful beacon for the community. We're also very excited to have some new features starting really just in the past few weeks with the Love Between Pride-themed intersection mural at 102nd and 1st. And we're very excited to be testing new programming in City Hall Plaza. And next week, King County will be opening the East Rail corridor from Northeast 4th north to Kirkland and Woodinville, which is just a very exciting new milestone along the corridor. As a reminder, the Grand Connection crossing, the work specifically for the crossing from City Hall Plaza over to East Rail, is currently in the 30% design phase. And our design team from WSP and LMN are working at a very ambitious pace, an ambitious schedule, to complete 30% design by the end of the year. We're also thrilled to have a growing group of external stakeholders and project supporters, and you heard from one member of the Friends of the Grand Connection tonight, which ultimately this group will help the city seek private support for the project, which of course is going to be very important to making it happen. Here's a look at the project schedule. So on the top, you see the items that are staff and consultant work, and then on the bottom, you see items that are public engagement. You'll see that we're midway through 30% design work after having completed a design charrette and alignment analysis. The consultant team is currently developing the type, size, and location study, which is a foundational document that informs further design and engineering work and also environmental review. So it's a really critical component. We're currently planning for an online open house this fall, which will lead into the ultimate 30% design and engineering documentation. So with that, I'll share a little bit more about some of the engagement activities that we've done to date, we've worked on to date. So here's a little bit more of a specific look. In December, we held a design workshop with the city project team, with property owners and Friends of the Grand Connection, which was really our first opportunity to discuss vision and priorities for the crossing. In late winter, we held an online open house, which was open to everyone, widely shared with city channels, including our neighborhood outreach lists, among many others. And this was focused again on informing people about the project, gathering information about priorities and objectives from the community, really trying to understand what people want to accomplish with the crossing. We're all thrilled with the turnout to our booth at the two-line opening celebration on April 27th, where we hosted more than 1,000 visitors throughout the day, gathering feedback and inviting attendees to our open house, which took place the following week. This in-person open house was a great opportunity where we spoke to 130 people at the Bellevue Botanical Garden, and we'll share more information on what feedback looked like in a minute. And then finally, I just want to share that we're also, as I mentioned, testing some pilot programming this summer, like additional seating, games, food trucks, and other amenities in City Hall Plaza. And this is intended to inform planning for the crossing and also long-term governance for how exactly these spaces could be programmed in the future. So a little bit more about the in-person open house. The in-person open house was held May 2nd, and there were a variety of opportunities that evening for attendees to interact, ask questions, share their perspectives, get more information. As participants walked in, they had an opportunity to complete a Mad Libs style activity. You see some of the results from that here. We showed drone footage on the screen. We had a kids drawing activity. And we showcased a giant overview map where participants could share more information about the features they wanted to see in particular places along the crossing. Here you see some of the words that people use to describe how they would use the crossing. So you see words like playing, laughing, hanging out, biking as big themes. Several amenities stood out as particularly desired. Let's see if my... Oh no.
No hurry.
Yeah, if you could advance one forward. Sorry about that.
We'll take it over from here if you just say next slide.
No worries. So several amenities stood out as particularly heavily desired, including resting areas and high-quality seating, comfort amenities like public restrooms and drinking fountains, small performance spaces, bike parking and other amenities for bicyclists, and greenery. One common theme that we heard was that there was a very significant desire for physical elements that could provide weather and sound protection, which makes sense. Of course, we have very long winters, so it's important to make sure that we have good overhead weather protection, and then we're crossing a freeway, so we want to make sure that we make the space as desirable as we possibly can. So that this information will be used to help inform the structure design.
Do you want to stop for just a second
Yeah.
until they get
It's up
the...
to you if you want to continue, you can. Our computer has lost connection to the meeting.
Oh,
which is
no.
why it's not working.
Why don't we just wait for a minute, because I
No
think
worries.
we'd like to see the pictures.
If you want to pause for just a few seconds.
Yeah. Do you want us to take a little break? Or how many minutes do you think it'll be?
Should be able to get it back in a minute or less.
All right.
Okay, we're back.
To slide 9, if
It
possible.
may have been a connection issue rather than the clicker. Try the clicker one more time and see.
No luck.
Nope. Okay, we'll take it over from here. That's the...
There we go.
Okay.
Awesome. So again, here you see some of the amenities that stood out as heavily desired, both in the in-person open house and then in the online open house, as well as in a number of the other engagements that we've had to date with project stakeholders. So resting areas, comfort amenities, things like public restrooms and drinking fountains, small performance spaces, a significant desire for spaces for small cultural performance, bike amenities, given that we are right along East Rail, of course, that's going to be a common theme. And then, as I mentioned, significant desire for things that can dampen the noise, as well as provide overhead weather protection. So things like greenery, public art, and strong signage as well were key themes that we've noted and will be taken forward into further design. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maher to talk a little bit more about the alignment analysis.
All right.
We'll go to
Next
slide.
slide, please. Thank you, Anthony, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council members. I have 2 slides for you to share with you about the alignment analysis and the process that we went through. It's going to be very brief. So, and related to the process, really the process was informed by site approach. And what we mean by that, we have essentially 5 different sites within the project with varying types of ownership, control, redevelopment plans, and features. The team cast a wide net, starting with many possibilities. I was told, like, if you count them, probably there's thousands of possibilities before narrowing down to 10 options. This included options like going north of the light rail guideway, extending Northeast 6th Street, improving Northeast 4th Street, and a few other possibilities as well. These options, they were evaluated using our fundamental objective for the project of improving pedestrian and bicyclist connectivity while ensuring future compatibility. We're talking about future development and redevelopment, also future I-405 lead, and at the same time, keeping in mind limiting our risk to schedule, cost, and feasibility. From these 10 options, we narrowed down to 4 different options, and after gathering additional information, we pretty much narrowed down to that one final option. Next slide, please. So ultimately, the recommended alignment from the design team was located south of the Sound Transit Light Rail Guideway, as you see here on the slide. This is in close alignment with the base case assumption from when we started this process. Also, it's the same from the initial study that was conducted by Amazon.
Can we go
Yes.
back to slide 10 and you show us which one you chose and then go to the next slide?
Sure. If we can go back, previous slide.
This is it. Which color did you choose? of
So
this?
actually, the color we chose is a variation of the blue color right underneath the light blue color.
Right.
This option, it's pretty much hugs the south side of the light rail all the way to the east, to the north side of future KGP development. While if we go to the next slide, as you see here, the future or the alignment we picked is the alignment that stays direct east, and it will go through the future development, and that was worked out with that development as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So with that, again, from the project team, all private property owners and others, they were all have been strong consensus around this alignment, and we're looking forward. We are moving forward toward the analysis of the structural options. And as Anthony mentioned, we're currently working on the size, type, and location, and that's where we'll address the structural type of the crossing. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jesse or Jesse.
Yes. Thank you, Maher. All right, next slide. And so with the alignment settled, we're able to start diving into some of the deeper areas, the more complicated areas. And so my comments may sound like bad news, but they're good news because we have advanced the design and engineering work enough that we are able to now see some of the opportunity costs and the trade-offs that might be required. This is normal in a project of this size and complexity that we will need to discuss some additional adjustments to scope, schedule, and budget, the baseline scope, schedule, and budget. As noted in the memo, we're gaining some of the clarity on some of the tensions between the desired opening date, the integration with future developments and the lid, cost versus memorability or iconicness. So all of those are in wonderful tension, and we can. Project manager will tell you can optimize for 2 of the 3. For scope, schedule, and budget, pick 2. 1 has to be deprioritized or de-optimized. So the consultants are still working on some additional analysis around the opportunity costs, the benefits of prioritizing or optimizing different opportunities. That's why we don't have it for you tonight. They're going to do that additional analysis, and those will be part of future conversations with the council and stakeholders over the next few months on how we optimize, which items we would like to optimize to provide that iconic, memorable, comfortable, only in Bellevue experience in 2044, 2100, and beyond. Next slide. And some of that conversation will be informed by funding development. So I am very excited to share that we have contracted with HR&A Advisors out of New York. They are a national economic development firm that advises on capital construction, capital costs, operations, and a variety of things around mega projects. And with 5 developments and a signature crossing over a highway. This is a small mega project. So there is a lot of experience with HRNA. They have worked on the High Line in New York, which will be the focus of the BDA's study tour this year. They have advised on Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, which the BDA visited a few years ago, and they have done work here on the redevelopment of the Seattle waterfront. So lots of national experience, local experience. There is no better firm to be advising Bellevue and our community than HRNA. So over the next few months, they will be working with us and our partners on understanding the full life cycle of the Grand Connection. We recognize that maintenance and programming continue beyond opening and cutting the ribbon on the crossing, so we want to make sure that those things are considered as we advance the design options and the partnership opportunities. They will be providing a comprehensive report that'll outline social, economic, environmental, and equity benefits that will be part of those conversations about which items we choose to optimize and which opportunities we want to prioritize. They'll also look at different revenue streams like philanthropy, tax increment financing, federal grants, other things that will then work with the city to help figure out what is the best package for funding the crossing and the constituent components. The Downtown Association, Friends of the Grand Connection, and stakeholders will be involved in those conversations and will be able to give their input both on the funding and on the options around long-term governance. So this will be, again, continue to be a public-private partnership as we push forward. And with that, I think it's back to Anthony.
Next slide, please. So just a little bit about what you can expect looking forward. As we just mentioned, you can expect additional refinement and engagement on the type, size, and location work over the next several months, and deeper conversations about particular trade-offs. And we'll be engaging with you all on that as well. As we just mentioned, we're underway with analysis of funding options, and we're excited to launch work to evaluate options for 2 of the city-owned properties as well on either end of the crossing this summer. You can expect to see us back at council likely later this summer or early fall for a deeper discussion about trade-offs and some of these design considerations. And then our big next public engagement opportunity will be an online open house this fall. And then in addition to that, I just want to mention that we will also be out at various different public events over the course of the summer, including this Sunday at the East Trail opening event, sharing more information about the crossing. So you'll see us at various opportunities, but the next big opportunity where there will be more new information will be at the online open house. And with that, we can move to the next slide and open it up to any council comment or questions.
Great. So yeah, this is information only. Let's start with Councilmember Zahn.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the update. I'm really excited about this. I was at that open house and got the ad lib, and I just thought what a great idea to get people's thoughts and activated about what this Grand Connection looks like. Also really excited to hear that we have a partner that we brought in with HRNA to look at the funding, because when I read through the packet, right now, there's quite a range of potential costs for this bridge. And so being able to really understand what the funding stack's going to look like will be really important. So I was really glad to see that. I think it's important that you also generated a number of alignment analysis. And so it sounds like we're done with fiddling around with exactly what the alignment is, which is good, because if you have too many options, then after a while, it's like this big spider web of decisions that you have to make. So I appreciate the fact that it looks like we picked the simplest alignment, hopefully, to get across, or the most direct alignment. So I think that's great. I appreciate the fact that you've identified logistically complex, that you have to integrate with the full freeway lid. I agree with that. You know, that was what we talked about as a council, is that we would start with this phase 1 with the idea that it would dovetail into the full freeway lid in the future. So I appreciate that. And collaborating with WatchDOT and phasing. So the reason I'm bringing these things up is the one piece I did not see in here that we talked about last time was bringing in an advisor to look at how we were looking at the delivery of the bridge. So I was hoping that that would be some of the pieces we would start to see, because as we move forward with the TSNL and 30% design, it starts to remove certain delivery methods from our plate that may actually be the best in addressing these very, that spider web of trade-offs that you had on slide number 12. So I would like to better understand where we are with how we're evaluating the delivery method side of this, because ultimately, if we are.
Can I just ask if that's
Yeah.
really the council role to be talking about that? I'm not sure that we should
Well,
be
you
going
know,
that deep.
So I'm not telling you what the decision should be, but last time what I heard was that we were bringing in a consultant to look at it. And the reason I do think the council should be asking questions is it plays into the schedule and the cost and ultimately the successful delivery of the project.
So can you consider that as you're moving forward, those Councilmember Zahn's comments on
So
that?
the good news that we have this task already on the consultant contract, and it's due in about July timeframe. They will be preparing information and a memo to us advising us on delivery method. It will not be a final, but it will be the start, and so they are looking into it, and it's part of our scope of work.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I thought you had mentioned that before, and
Right.
I didn't see anything in the packet, so.
It's coming up probably July timeframe.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm excited to see this move forward.
Great. Okay, Councilmember Hamilton.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. Certainly agree with much of what Councilmember Zahn said. Love this project. There's clearly a lot of support for it. Was also at the open house at the Botanical Gardens. Had a chance to look at the presentations and talk with a lot of folks. So I think this crossing certainly does a lot more than provide some transportation options for walkers and bikers and rollers, though that's critical, and I'm glad it does that. I kind of look at this crossing, I think how Seattle came to look at the Alaskan Way Viaduct. And it was a roadway, a structure that created this harmful separation within the city. And I'm glad to see us kind of bridging the obvious gap that 405 represents. So, instead of removing the separation, we're adding a connection. And I think it's really a vital connection for visitors and residents and workers. And it's another way that we can strengthen our community connections. And I really like that. So I think this is a great time considering, Wilburton and East Trail, Bell Red, and the whole area really developing, to have this connection weaving through there. Very exciting. I think the outreach work sounds, like you've really done a good job, and what I've seen, I've been really impressed with. So thank you for that. I think the alignment analysis, this is the first time I've ever looked at an alignment analysis. But, I think that's well done, and this direct route that goes alongside the light rail, from my view, that seems really good. And then too, we're at this early part of which seems relatively early to me, early part of the process, where we're starting to look at the trade-offs. I think that's really smart and helpful to have plenty of time to do that, and we know now that that's coming. So we can begin to have those conversations. And then too, what does the bridge look like? Is it this kind of, great visual? Is it utilitarian? So I think, and I think what we're going to arrive at, which I think is really important, is we need a design that's doable, right? I mean, we want to build it, so we need to create something that's very buildable. So, definitely look forward to future conversations. Glad about that. Seems like this project is right on track, and the deadline, to cut that ribbon in 2028 is exciting. I think it needs to be on track. I think it needs to be done with the level of seriousness that you're going about it to achieve that. And I think the investment here is really going to reap benefits for the city. And looking at those wide range of funding sources is really how we achieve this and build this vital connection. So, well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't get excited too much. At my age, I think the reasons are obvious. But this is really exciting for me. For very few times I say I'm excited about this. As you see from the graphics right in front of you, this connects from the waterfront Made in Bay all the way over 405 and to the east of 405. City of Bellevue is cut off by 405. Like Councilmember Hamilton was saying, Alaskan Way, or actually I-5 cuts the city of Seattle, and this cuts the city. And we have been working, this is not new. This is the pedestrian corridor that has been the vision of the city 20 years ago, over then. And so we've been building pieces. The city, we react to a lot of things very well, because when citizens want something, when outside forces come in, they want to do something, we do it. But this is one that really is Bellevue motivated, Bellevue specific. It's bringing the Bellevue from the east to the west, the whole Bellevue now connected. We designed Bellevue Corridor with that in mind. What good is Bellevue Corridor? You want to connect east of the 405 to Redmond. It brings the downtown. Downtown is the goose that lays the golden egg. So it's a very important center of the city. And now we're connecting to Wilburton. And that's now going to become another center of the city. It's not just another, but it's one and all. And then we can go all the way across the east side of Bellevue. And that's what emanates. So it's really exciting. And this is very Bellevue-centric, very Bellevue-specific project that we proactively doing. It takes so long to do it because it's just very worthwhile. I want to make sure that we realize that it has to be iconic, has to be well done, and so I appreciate you getting a national consultant coming to help us. You made the statement that it's a consultant that work on the New York's the iconic project. I don't know what the Dallas project is, but obviously it's very experienced, very exposed to whatever real iconic is. It's not just Bellevue, because Bellevue is first-class global city. What we do, because it's Bellevue proactive design and project, that's going to be iconic. So I really appreciate this. So I'm really happy to see all the elements you're putting in, and the people you're talking about, East Trail, I don't need to repeat it all, but it's just a wonderful project that's going to put Bellevue right on the map, together with New York, Dallas, whichever city you can rank. And it's going to make Bellevue the landmark of the Pacific Northwest. Maybe not even that, but the West Coast. And I think that's why the company like Amazon is interested to give us the money, the funding, the support to identify the city and whoever associates with the city as an iconic landmark that showcases the people of Bellevue. Keep going. I wish it happened sooner. Don't slow down. Keep going. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Stokes.
Well, for me, this is extremely exciting. I came on council in 2012, and the BDA did its first trip to other cities around the country, went to Denver, and guess what? We were already talking about, the Grand Connection actually has been in place from Maidenbar Bay kind of down, close to downtown, and that's kind of where it stopped. And there was actually something like this in Denver, going from downtown Denver all the way across the Platte River, long stretch by the universities and all, and then going up and across a freeway and up to a neighborhood that was old and had been revitalized and everything else. And I came back so excited about this whole thing and wanting to say, let's really move it forward. I had a brown bag lunch, invited a lot of people who hadn't gone there and all, but upstairs, and we met on this thing, and the council, we started talking about it, and we realized that this is something that would be just amazing. And what we also found out is there are a lot of places to go to work and learn from, and not only Denver, San Francisco, Dallas. When we went to Dallas, we went across this bridge. That was another piece that added to this was, yeah, let's go across the freeway. Now, they're going up the freeway across it, but so we've been all this time working together on this whole thing and looking at it. There's one in Columbus that's really great. There's others around the country. But one of the things is all these other cities we're talking about, they're pretty big cities. They've been around a long time. And Bellevue, and like Councilmember Lee said, we're doing something that is really amazing, and for the region and for the area and the whole Northwest, this will be just amazing. So like we thought back in 2015 or so, we thought maybe somewhere we'd be building it by now. But these things take time. And that's something, again, that I think we're very proud of, that Bellevue and the city and the cities around us and our population understand and keep working on things. We don't give up on it. And going through the pandemic was a big blow, in a sense, on the whole thing. But, and we've had the fortune of having other companies come in and get involved, and people in the developers and just people living in Bellevue want to see this. And the other thing that is so amazing is the East Row piece, and now that's connected, and so that has really made it so much bigger. So we get through with this thing, and I'd like to see it in 26 and not 28. But I think it's just going to be something that's just absolutely amazing. It's unique in the area, and we're going to do it. And the staff has been just amazing in all of this time, working through this thing. And nobody has said, oh, we just got to quit this thing. It's too much trouble. The council, staff, community have all said, let's do this. And so we're going to do it.
Great. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for a great presentation, and thank you for all of the work you do. I cannot wait to listen to the next presentation and learn more details on the potential funding that the HRA is going to advise us on. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm excited like everybody. I just have a couple of questions. On the kind of the Venn diagram, where you have all the trade-offs, how important is it that this initial phase be compatible with the future lid?
Yeah, if you can put that slide up, and there will help me get the thoughts. So again, this is really, again, yeah, next slide, please.
Did you want 12?
12. Yes, 12. Yeah, sorry. Yes, so this is really important, especially now we're talking about the size, type, and location of the projects, and that's where we're defining the size of the project based on what we're hearing from the community about the amenity that they want to see. So it is really important that right here next in the near future to talk about these trade-off and be all on the same page as Jesse talked about, how we can accomplish as many of these elements as possible.
So you're just putting out all the things, the considerations, you haven't really decided where you're going on it yet?
That is coming up really next up.
All right, then my other question, thank you for that answer. The other question is there going to be anything separating pedestrians from the bike commuters on this initial design?
So that we're looking at, again, with amenity, is there a separation between pedestrian and bicyclist? More on the details, more to come on that.
Okay, but that's on the first
That's
thing.
the goal,
And that was one of the things that really came out, especially during the in-person open house, was a strong desire for kind of separated lanes, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, City Manager, could you introduce the final study session item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. So the next study session centers on our tree code updates, and tonight staff is going to present a recommended land use code amendment and a proposed Bellevue City Code amendment to better support the tree canopy goals of the city. And council did receive a recommendation and reviewed the land use code updating the retention regulations several weeks ago. Tonight, they're presenting updates to this previously reviewed amendment. And they're also presenting the proposed Bellevue City Code, which is a companion to the land use code, and it updates tree protection, replacement, and enforcement regulations. Following the discussion, staff is seeking council direction to prepare both of these for final action at a future meeting. And from Development Services, we're joined by Rebecca Horner, our director, and Christina Gallant, our acting assistant director. And with that, I will turn it over to Christina.
Thank you. Good evening. So tonight we are very pleased to be with you for our second of two planned study sessions on now the full suite of amendments proposed with the Tree Canopy Code Amendments project. So this evening, the direction that we are seeking is for council to consider directing staff to finalize the BCCA and LUCA ordinances for final action at a future meeting. So our agenda tonight, first, we will cover some updates to the LUCA. We have had a couple of more substantive updates since the previous study session, which we want council to review. We will be presenting our proposed city code amendments for the first time. So we'll cover some of the objectives that we considered in developing this proposal. Then walk through the major topics of the proposal itself, most notably our monetary penalties and tree permitting and replacement. These are provisions that apply outside of development. We will then cover our immediate implementation steps and then wrap it up with a recap of our process to date. If council recalls, just before our study session last month, we did receive a letter from a private school that was looking to redevelop in an R1.8 land use district, one of our lower density single family districts. Kind of an exceptional case, but one that we acknowledge wasn't well supported within the previous draft. So the most significant change that we've included here is establishing some lower minimum tree credit requirements for non-residential uses in residential land use districts. These are not common. Most non-residential uses that are allowed in residential land use districts today are conditional uses. The most typical cases would be schools, religious institutions, also some recreational facilities. So there aren't many, but these uses do happen, and they typically have more extensive circulation requirements, other things to accommodate on the site that warrant a lower provision. So the approach that we've drafted does accommodate the proposal that was presented last month and others like it. A couple of other inclusions. So we have incorporated our initial in lieu fee value into the land use code. That's currently at $1,300. That was an estimate the Parks Department put together for what it takes to buy a tree, plant it, get it established over several years. That would be updated over time, like all of our other in lieu fees. We have revised the 3-year look-back replacement ratio to be consistent with the city code proposal. We have also added some revisions to clarify intent. These don't change what our approach has been, but there were a couple sections that had been more confusing to stakeholders. So first, setting up the conditions where tree removal is allowed on low canopy sites. And second, in setting up our priorities for tree retention, that those priorities are given as guidance for which trees we would like to see prioritized on a site, but it's not necessarily to trump other considerations like the health of trees, for example. Another note we wanted to include here is that throughout this, both since the previous meeting and throughout this process, we have been coordinating very closely with the city attorney's office in confirming our proposals' consistency with the Growth Management Act in their interpretation. So wanted to offer a note there that they have been a close partner. So onto the city code itself. We did incorporate a lot of feedback from the community that often kind of served at cross purposes, so balancing a lot of different viewpoints here. First, one of the clear items that we heard was support for requiring a permit for removing any significant or landmark tree on the condition that that could be an affordable, easy to get permit, acknowledging the impact to property owners. We also heard a lot of comments from property owners who wanted to make sure we could allow some limited tree removal without complex analysis or review in residential districts, say when you might want to remove a tree or two, so finding some balance there as to when replanting would be required. Also, just incorporating replanting requirements. Under our current standards, we only require tree replanting in very limited cases, generally when the tree is in a critical area. So this would introduce replanting requirements in certain scenarios, more generally when folks are removing more trees. We've also tasked with looking back at our enforcement tools and finding opportunities to support better tracking data on our trees in real time. So the first topic this evening are our monetary penalties. So first, some notes on our current approach and why we're recommending changes. So in our code currently, Development Services is obligated to pursue voluntary compliance first before pursuing any monetary penalties. And while this works really well as a first course of action in certain code violations, like if somebody's put up a fence that violates the code, working with them to remove it, that's an example. But when it comes to tree removal, voluntary compliance really is getting them to replant trees. But depending on the violation, that may not be a really kind of appropriate conclusion. So we have updated the, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So at present, we have to pursue voluntary compliance first before moving on to value-based fines. We do have the ability to impose value-based fines for illegal tree removal, but it's in fairly isolated cases. And these fines, there is a standard procedure for an arborist to assess the value of the tree, and they can get very substantial. For mature trees, we are talking about, we had one example of a multi-stem big leaf maple where 4 stems, each at least 30 inches, that was appraised at $98,000. So for a mature tree, this really can be a substantial deterrent. But currently in the code, our ability to pursue those kinds of fines is very limited. Currently, it would be for illegal tree removal on city property, and the Parks Department does go through this process regularly for their violations, and also for violations of our tree retention code. So what that doesn't include would be cases where a tree wasn't necessarily designated for retention, but it's on private property, but it's removed without a permit. So that would be a scenario where currently we don't have the ability to pursue a value-based fine. And finally, in any event, ultimately the final fine is set by the hearing examiner. That is the venue for reviewing all of our civil violations that occur. So while we can make that recommendation for the fine, they ultimately review the evidence and set the final. So the updates that we have proposed. First, we have given the flexibility that we are no longer under an obligation to pursue voluntary compliance first. For tree-related violations, we could opt to instead move first to pursuing a value-based penalty. So we have also expanded the circumstances when value-based fines may be pursued to cover scenarios like removing a tree without a permit. We have also added the ability to seek double fines for repeat violations on private property. One note that's not on the slide, we have also added that we can add on the cost of hiring a qualified professional to do the assessment onto that penalty as well. We've updated the minimum penalty. Currently, it's only about $200, so we've brought that up to the current value of the fee in lieu, whatever that may be, for those limited scenarios where perhaps we're not able to get a tree assessed. We've updated the valuation reference to the current book that is commonly used for that methodology. And one thing that has remained, this would still be a hearing examiner process for all of our civil violations. So while we have added additional tools to make that request in the case, the exact final penalty is still out of our hands in that sense. So now on to permitting and replacement for tree removal. Again, this is all outside of development. Under our current approach, a permit is not always required to remove a tree except in bridle trails and for landmark trees. Currently, in most cases, a permit is required to remove more than 5 significant trees in 3 years. So that's basically under the honors system for residents. Very difficult to confirm a violation has occurred with that threshold. We also don't have a way to track tree removal really consistently over time. And finally, another issue with our current approach, as noted previously, tree replacement is required in very limited circumstances. We'll note too that with that threshold, with the inability to kind of track or review, it's very possible that people may be inadvertently removing trees that were designated for retention without knowing it. So we have proposed a set of updates. And the first major category provides for some specific considerations for our residential districts, acknowledging the potential impacts to property owners with the permitting processes, and also reflecting the fact that these are districts that generally have higher tree canopy cover, so we feel that we can give a bit more leeway. So we are recommending or proposing a new quick review tree removal permit. This would be required for any significant or landmark tree removal in residential districts, but it would provide a faster and more affordable process for limited tree removal on residential sites. And on the next slide, we'll queue up what those conditions are. For tree removal that's eligible for this option, replacement and arborist review would not be required. So the real advantage here is that we can capture that consistent tracking and also flag for conditions where other review could be required, such as if there's clearing activity happening, checking if the tree is in a critical area, some of those other considerations where we're able to do enough review to either kind of move it along or flag additional review processes that might be required. So that limited review and what that would be depends on the size of the property. So depending on the site, there would be an annual threshold of the number of trees which could be removed without a permit and without requiring replacement. We do have an additional condition that even if you are removing trees up to that limit, that a set number of significant or landmark trees would have to remain, with the intent that this could prevent someone from fully clearing a site over time, for example. So the way this would work, taking the example of a site that's less than 10,000 square feet in a given 12-month period, they could remove either one landmark tree or 2 significant trees, again, still needing to go through the quick review process. on the condition that at least 2 significant or landmark trees would remain on their property after that removal happens. Hazardous tree removal, confirmed hazardous tree removal, in this case would need to be verified by an arborist, would not count to that limit, however. So some conditions for tree replacement and tree removal that doesn't fall within those set limits. So for cases where a tree removal is not eligible for this quick review process, tree replacement would be required. We have set some tree replacement ratios, 1-to-1 for significant trees, 3-to-1 for landmark trees. However, that can be reduced to 2-to-1 if the applicant is opting to bring in some large conifer species as those replanting trees. And we are working on a species selection guide with our technical consultant that would help advise on that piece, among other scenarios. However, for cases where they might be removing more trees, but a large number would still remain, the applicant does have the ability to demonstrate that their property would still meet the minimum tree density, which is defined in the land use code, in order to reduce or waive that replacement requirement. This is offered only in the scenario that you're getting into tree replacement, just acknowledging that for the average homeowner, calculating that minimum tree credit, minimum tree density approach could be more challenging, might require an arborist's weigh in. But that option is out there to give some more flexibility. And finally, this was not something that we actually had in our code before this draft. Any trees which were previously planted or retained for development regulations, such as our land use code tree credit system, must be retained unless they are hazardous, and that would have to be confirmed by an arborist. So we do have a number of really substantive changes. And so the work that we have on both implementing the changes and getting the word out is going to be substantial. So on the education and outreach side, as noted previously, we're working with our consultant on a tree planting guide or species selection guide that will also help to advise on species that are not only well adapted for our climate, but also appropriate for circumstances like perhaps not growing too high to preserve a view, or that work well in small spaces, those kinds of considerations. We're also working on some user guides for the staff and members of the public, including tree service providers. And we will be doing a push of outreach to the community, developers, tree service providers, to get the word out that these regulations are changing and what they are, offering questions, coordinating with the ESI staff as well to provide information that they can have available at their upcoming events, tabling for the tree giveaway happening this fall as well, opportunities like that. We do have an internal team that is in place, meeting to get everything set up behind the scenes for this new permit type, which I will acknowledge has been a bigger lift than I anticipated. There's a lot of moving pieces between my building permit, fee structures, all of that, but we have everyone in the room working on developing this approach, sorting out what the fee would be, and all of the considerations for getting that up to speed. We're also working on getting consistent permit system fields in place in Amanda, our internal permit system, to make sure that not just for our tree removal permits, but for all of our development permits that would have the tree credit system applied, that we're keeping consistent track of when tree planting, tree removal, tree retention is happening, so that we can have good, consistent information over time and provide for some reporting opportunities. So our process to date, this ALUCA was initiated back in November 2022. We held two public information sessions. Our engagement with the Planning Commission ran from December of 2023 up to April of this year, including 3 study sessions and our public hearing and recommendation. This is our second study session with the City Council on this proposal. And so the direction we are seeking tonight is to return at a future date, currently scheduled for July 16th, to take action on the LUCA and BCCA. So with that, thank you again. The direction that we are requesting this evening is to consider directing staff to finalize the BCCA and LUCA ordinances for final action at a future meeting. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to start us off and just say what we see here tonight is really a result of the community requests. You know, we heard a lot from the community that there was a need for our better tree codes. It's been 2.5 years of work to get us to this point. The community asked that we look at this at our council retreat. We made it part of our council vision. We made it part of the budget. We hired people, as you know, to help us work on this. And then we received much community feedback in advance and as a result of this draft. And we've heard from every side of the proposal, and it's been really great. So I think this is a great result of good community communication and outreach and responsiveness of the staff. So thank you so much for all that you've done here. It's a big body of work. I am very much in favor. I realize it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. And I would like to implement it as you've proposed and then reassess it. So at what point do you think we can reassess to see, A, are we retaining more trees than the past, and B, make sure we're not limiting development in a way we don't want it to do?
Sure. So the next opportunity, we are later this summer, we're kicking off our process of developing code for implementing House Bill 1110 and 1337 for middle housing and ADUs. And so we have committed to, with that, taking a look at our tree regulations to check in on where some tweaks might be needed in order to get that, accommodate some of those new housing types. So at that point, we'll be coming back with that draft code has to be adopted by June of next year. So we'd be coming back to council for a study session, probably late spring at the latest. So that'll be a great opportunity for us to provide some early indicators on what we're seeing in the data, what we're hearing from the development community, and provide some kind of early guidance there. Yeah.
That sounds good. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for a great presentation. I echo majority of what Mayor mentioned. I'm also very excited about this and happy that we are finally making this to the code. I have 2 questions. One is, one of the audience mentioned something about that retention is not required, is recommended. Can you explain on what they were talking about?
Yeah, so, and I'll say the actual approach hasn't changed between our 2 study sessions, but I think there could be different interpretations. So under the tree credit system, we no longer have a set share of those credits that have to come from retention. The way that it's set up is that it is significantly easier to achieve your minimum tree credits through retention. And it's set up so that, for example, our fee in lieu is a last course of action after retention, after planting. We do have additional limits on removing trees that apply when a site comes in and has low canopy to begin with. But in general, the philosophy we've taken is that if an applicant comes in and the site is already above its minimum tree density, they have the flexibility to determine what mix of retention and planting makes the most sense for their site and their project. However, if they're coming in and the tree density is low to start with, we have additional limits on tree removal to demonstrate that removal is really needed to support the proposed development. So effectively, under most, it's hard to imagine cases where there would be no retention, but it is more of an incentive-based approach towards preserving trees.
And what was the reason to change that from the last one to this one?
That has always been our intent with the structure. I think specifically what we're responding to is that we have some priorities for retention which are set up for guidance. So we say, first we recommend preserving landmark trees, then groves of significant and or landmark trees, then significant trees elsewhere on the site. But where the confusion had been happening is that this was sometimes interpreted to mean that all landmark trees must first always be retained, then groves of trees always retained up to or perhaps supplanting the minimum tree credits. So it was just a clarification on our part to say that these are the trees we recommend retaining first, but it's not a requirement.
Thank you. My last question is, can you elaborate more on the non-residential site and how your minimum tree credit requirements are going to be different for them and how that will help them to have more flexibility to do some development?
Sure. So we basically what we did, we started with we have a defined minimum number of credits for these non-residential uses in areas outside of residential districts. So we took that minimum and we scaled it up following a similar logic to the approach we used for our single family and multifamily minimums in residential districts. So for an R1 district, for example, which is where only your density is one housing unit per acre, you still have a higher expectation if somebody was proposing a non-residential use in that district, like a school, compared to an R5. So it's lower than what would be required for, say, a single-family home, reflecting, think of a school, you've got a parking lot, you've got play fields, just a bigger facility to accommodate in general, just reflecting all that needs to happen on those sites. But there's still going to be a higher level that needs to be achieved in some of those larger lot neighborhoods that have a lot more established canopy.
Thank you, Mayor. That's for me.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I think it's, this is a very, very thorough review, and it's something we needed for some time. I understand, of course, we're still kind of working through it. I think and I want to say the briefings we've had have been very, very good, and that's always appreciated. And I've gone through a situation myself and with a tree, and I think I appreciate this being, finalized and also clearer and having a better kind of focus on the goals and everything. I think it's really good. I do understand that we're talking about, this is not the whole piece on on taking care of trees and having trees and tree replacement. There's another factor that will come along later, a little different focus, right? Another group, another factor.
Can you elaborate on that? So we've got the proposed drafts that we have in place would be our recommended updates at this point for the tree code. Are you interested in more kind of education on trees, outreach on trees? Because there's a lot that we do with regard to trees that isn't necessarily reflected in our regulations.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think it's what I was thinking about. There's some conversation about, we're not talking about people living in the houses and having troubles with the trees, but other situations where development is taking place. There's some differences on that. It's something we're still working on also.
So our land use code proposal is set at this point. So we've proposed a full update to our tree retention requirements, updating with the minimum tree credit system. This would be the new system that would apply for new development. We did talk a bit about what I think you might be talking about. What the mayor brought up is that, I mean, with any code project, we like to evaluate it over time. And we will be bringing in some new types of development with our middle housing legislation. And so we do know we are going to look at including some potential revisions with that update. So if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little more complex than just the people living in a house and that situation. I mean, there's a lot of other factors in it, and we're doing something that's more positive also on that. The other thing I wanted to just mention, and I know you're having conversations with this, the Seattle and East Side realtors are very active with this, and they're having they look at it a different way, but I assume that we're still talking with and working with that, and there's some things that we can, I think partly someone's just misunderstanding or not quite getting what the goal is, but I personally feel if we can get them on board and more direct with what we're doing, understand what we're working on, it's going to be much better. Because we're going to have to, I mean, we have to deal with people who are coming in, and they're, even with people who are just coming into the house and they don't understand this. So and I think what you're doing is having much more clarity and much more specificity, and also taking back something that has been a little kind of iffy. I was really surprised when I started working on this tree, and a neighbor was wanting it cut down, that all it finally ended up with just having we got a permit, or the other people actually said, okay, we'll take it down. But it was just coming in and get a permit and kind of looking at it. And so this seems like we're having a more comprehensive and a much more focused and probably much more productive code that will actually help us actually do what we want to do in terms of tree retention and how we balance that whole piece. The other piece that I was thinking about too is that we're going to have to look at this when we get into more ADUs and more housing on a single lot. That's another piece we're working on that too. But and we had just had a really good meeting and talking about this and getting a upgrade on it, and I'm really pleased with it. It's really very good work. It's a lot more rational, and I think people can understand it better than our current code. So I'm looking forward to us going forward on it. And we can continue having conversations with people who are looking at it from different perspectives and all that. And but I think it's doing a good job. It's a good presentation.
Thanks. Thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend you on going through this process. It's very, very complicated. With all the various value-based decisions you have to make. We've heard people who wants to preserve, and I think we all want to preserve trees, but then the situation is so different. There are developments and there are existing properties, so on. So I just compliment you, and you come up with this recommendation. It's not easy. So I have a couple questions, and then one is we talk about new developments, right? And there's a set of different value judgment, what they can do, what they cannot do. The other one is our existing properties, what's appropriate. So how do you handle, just generally speaking, differentiate? I'm not quite clear by reading all the code, which one is preservation, which one is actually, making it work for new developments, how much we should do. Just quickly, maybe, if you can.
Sure, yeah, so our land use code provisions, those apply to new development proposals, and in the code, we define what we mean by that. So not just new development, but situations where the lot coverage of a site is changing. So that includes like add-ons to a property, or cases where the impervious site coverage is changing. So generally, if the footprint of the structure is expanding in some way, the structure or the developed area in some way where trees might be getting removed, our land use code provisions would be triggered, and that's the full tree credit system. If you're not proposing that kind of activity, if it's just a homeowner who wants to remove a tree on their property, that's where we have a more simplified set of permit requirements that are now going to be in our city code.
Very good. Second question is, you mentioned about low canopy versus high canopy areas. How do you distinguish, how do you define what's high canopy, what's low canopy?
Yeah, and I probably shouldn't have used that word because our tree credit system uses credits that look at the diameter of trees. So a large diameter tree is certainly generally correlated with a higher canopy cover, but canopy does not come into this assessment. We've recommended the credit diameter approach because it's much more discrete to measure. When you come into measuring canopy, there's a lot more wiggle room thinking about what time of the year is it, how we deal with overlap, things like that. But the city does also assess canopy. We have a canopy assessment that comes out every other year that looks at that coverage. And we have some targets for what our canopy should be. So it's 40% citywide, and the report also breaks down some differences in what we want to aim for in residential districts, where there's a higher goal versus our downtown. So it kind of accounts for some differentiation there as well.
When you talk about canopy, you could talk about each tree canopy or the general canopy coverage of all the trees there, right? So it's both, either or together.
Yeah, so the citywide assessment looks at the canopy across the city.
Right.
It's LiDAR footage that comes from above. So it at this time, hopefully the technology improves. It doesn't isolate the specific number of trees or their diameter. It just looks at that coverage.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also want to say that I appreciate you included in your discussion, you have look for data. I think I really like the approach you're using because a lot of things we're doing is value-based. So, you always, as a statement, it says, don't fool around with Mother Nature. And this is nature. And we have to have our own value. That's important. We want to preserve it. We want to make sure we meet all the standards that give us, the objective we're looking for, the value we can accomplish. So my sense is that that's why I appreciate what the mayor brought up, that we probably need to reassess as you go along, because you're going to be learning, you're going to be finding out what the Mother Nature really is intending. It's going to help us to determine, what really we are looking for. And we need to also get input from the community as we go along as well. So you mentioned that you will come back to us sometime when, but I think it is important. We do see what you're doing. It is meeting your thoughts, because what you're doing is very thoughtful, very, very well done, very difficult, but you're letting us know how the program goes so that we can tweak it. We have some flexibility, make sure it meets all our objectives. So thank you.
Thanks.
Or Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Hamilton.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the information. I think you've really done some great work here. I think what you've proposed is clear and complete. Really appreciate the time you've taken to add some cleanup amendments related to permits and permit applications, violations code. I think we're always well served when we have a good, clear, common understanding of the rules. So thank you for that. I'm glad to see that the diameter at breast height, well, that's still a weird, I know, standard term, clearly defined. So at least it's there and easy to figure out. So thank you. Thank you also too, just this solution that you have for this tree credits and the non-residential uses in the residential land use districts. I just think that concern was raised initially. The next day, we had a council meeting. You had already looked into it. And here we are just a couple of short weeks later, and you've already addressed that. So I know it's not always possible to respond so quickly, but it's great. And I'm glad that doing it is possible. It's not the rule that we get to a point where we won't consider it. So thank you for that. I did have a question about, and this was actually even raised a little bit earlier in the public comment, but about the homeowner tree removal and the period of time that needs to elapse in between when trees are removed and when they can be removed again. And I think we were at 12 months. And I'm just kind of curious maybe how you came to that. What do neighboring cities do? But if you could just talk about that a little bit, because I'm kind of wondering if maybe that is one where, we could ask residents to kind of tap the brakes a little bit, take a little bit more time, be a little bit more considerate in their planning, and maybe in that they come up with other solutions that might not have to do with removing trees.
Yeah, the Trees for Livability suggestion there is one that just came up in the past few days, but it is an interesting idea. We look to Kirkland has a similar kind of approach to what we're proposing. They have 12 months, and we'd heard that had been working well. So we use that as a starting point. Some of the key considerations are that, we do have that backstop on if they are removing more trees, you still have that fallback to that number that have to remain on the site. But the time question is interesting. I do like the idea of a shorter period just because for ease of review, because again, we're wanting to make this a quick process. The 12-month period also means there's only 12 months we need to look back. When we extend that period, it does start to become more likely that the property might change hands. So helping to work with property owners over time. I think it's an interesting idea, but we do see more commonly that 12-month limit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Glad to hear all the feedback from my colleagues tonight, and I think I'm supportive of what you have done here, and so look forward to hearing from council members on and having you come back at some point. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate hearing from my colleagues, all of your comments. This is a big step for us because this is the first major update in 40 years. And so thank you for your diligence. I think that as you've gotten comments, you've been very thoughtful about how do we thread a needle in our policy. I really appreciate the fact that it is not a one-size-fits-all because I think that our community is complex, our properties are complex. So having that credit system that really tries to fit a lot of different scenarios, I really appreciate that. So thank you for finding that system. I really appreciate the fact that the voluntary compliance is not a required first step. Because after a tree's already come down, what does voluntary compliance look like? You can't actually just reapply the tree. And then the repeat offenders, I would say as we, track the methods and come back when we look at 1110 and 1337, I would like us to think about on the repeat offenders, double for a repeat offender. What if they do it 3 times or 4 times? That maybe we should really be thinking about does double actually do anything, or do we need to think about something else? And then one of the comments we heard earlier was, I think, asking about, is there a way to do a portal for tree permits so there's visibility and transparency as the permits are being applied for or issued? So I'm wondering in the implementation where it says reporting, whether that is one of the pieces we're thinking about doing. And then when we think about getting the word out and the resources, are those going to be translated into multiple languages as well? And so the user guides, hopefully there's some like one-pagers, so easy, because those codes are not very easy to follow. And so it brings me to, will there be some technical assistance that we'll be able to do, like a hotline they can call? Because not everyone is a developer, and I can appreciate there's lots of people that are not purposely trying to violate any rules, but really doesn't understand what this means. And then lastly, the 40% tree canopy is part of our Sustainable Bellevue, right? So as we track how we're doing, is that a place where tree canopy and tree retention and how this is going could be included as part of the reporting? So it's not a separate thing, but it could be within that environmental stewardship effort. So those were my couple of questions. Thanks.
Yeah, those are great. Where to start? So I think you've brought up a number of great ideas, some which we have been thinking about, some which I think we definitely should kind of keep track of. Our first step in implementation is really kind of getting the structure in place to make the permitting and reporting possible. So as our first phase, we're focused on getting this new permit set up, getting all of the reviewers up to speed, getting the fields in our permitting system so that we can even report accurately on what's happening. But at the same time, we have been talking about, could we have a public map layer in place to kind of share information on applications that hasn't been set yet, but there's a lot of interest internally. So I'd say that I think that would be a great implementation piece to look at. With our outreach, yes, we have heard a lot of comments about making sure that we are thinking of the lower English proficiency population. As we're planning to get together perhaps a mailer or other kind of publications, making sure those are translated into the top 7 languages has been raised. So a lot of that's more of an immediate kind of piece that we do want to prioritize. Let's see what else. Sustainable Bellevue, if that's the right place. That sounds like a good idea to me. I have been coordinating with Jennifer Ewing's team, so we can talk to them to see if that makes sense. We do know trees are always a hot topic of interest. We will have the data, so it's great to have different means to get it out there.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, yeah.
I have a very urgent question to ask, which is triggered by Councilmember Zhan's statement about when shoe doesn't fit all. So I just have one question.
Okay.
Which is, you mentioned bridle trails is exempt from some of these. And I recall always that Somerset, is just different, opposite from bridle trails. They have a covenant in the community that preserves or takes care of trees. And so we did something for bridle trails, so are we doing something to address Somerset's situation when they may want to do something different than others, like bridle trails?
So in the
with tree
draft,
they
we
have?
will no longer have distinctions for bridle trails. What our approach has been instead is that we have different minimum tree densities established for our different land use districts. So bridle trails lines up with that's where we see a lot of that R1 zoning. But our take had been, if we're treating places like bridle trails, we have other land use districts in that R1 category that have a pretty similar typology. So we've kind of taken the approach of structuring our amendments to kind of bring up those similar situations up to a comparable level of tree protection as what we have in bridle trails today. But we've brought in a bit more flexibility. And then For places like Somerset and other view communities, within the tree credit system, they do have flexibility in how they approach planting and retention, such as, selecting smaller tree species. We believe there's a good amount of flexibility to accommodate those different scenarios. There's a lot of different paths to compliance. At the end of the day, when it comes to tree covenants, those are ultimately private agreements, which we don't enforce. But yeah, providing like guidance on species for trees that work well without getting too tall, that's one of the pieces that we're looking at to help provide some information,
Right,
yeah.
but they do have to abide with the city's code though, right? So some of these trees has been there for 60 years. And so I don't know whether there's any provision that will address perhaps some of those situations. That's why I'm just asking the question, I don't know. So that's maybe something you can consider or look at as part of your, moving forward, implementing, reviewing it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not hearing any changes to the proposed code amendments. So I'm going to ask for a motion from the deputy mayor, and I feel like if it's possible for you, we should be able to bring this back on consent. Is that a possible thing? Okay.
Great. I move to direct staff to finalize the Bellevue City Code Amendment and updated Land Use Code Amendment ordinances for final action at a future meeting on consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Thank you so much. Great work. Okay, we are done with our meeting, but we are now going into an executive session for about 25 minutes. Let's see. We're going to discuss one matter of cybersecurity, and we will adjourn from the meeting after that. So, council, let's get together for executive session at 8:15. Okay, thank you.